going from medicine to business was a shocking experience because I had never thought of business as that. But one of the things that I did derive a great source of pleasure from was working with young people who were healthy and had a sense of looking forward to a future. I think there's no doubt that one of the things that used to get me down in medicine was that I was dealing with people who were at the other end of the pendulum, and where I was spending a lot of my time looking after people who didn't have a lot to look forward to and were in fact dying. So one of the things that gave me great satisfaction, and it came as a kind of a shock when I was working with young people, was working with them and enjoying with them their sense of achievement and satisfaction and the success that's made of the company. I go out of my way to stay out of his way, and I do that so that I'm available to him only if he asks for an opinion. And I think that's the way it should be. And when he does ask me, I sure give it to him. But that's the way it should be, and that's my dad and I worked the same way. He was very good about it, even though I came right out of medicine. He said, look, he said, you've got the job. He said, you look after it, and he said, I'll be out of your way, but if you want my help, you can call on me. It works. I think that's the way it should be. I was busy in practice at this time. I had a large practice, and it took up all my time. It was during that time he told me, he said, I've been doing a lot of looking around and reading, and he said, I think that there's going to be a real opportunity in the wine business in Canada. Again, being the driving visionary that he was, he said, I've heard they grow grapes in BC. He said, maybe I can get a license there. And he'd never been to British Columbia. He got on an airplane, flew out to Vancouver and Victoria, and came back 2 weeks later. He'd obtained a license for a winery from the BC government. I wanted to help Dad. I went to the administrator of the hospital and told him that my dad needed some assistance. And I felt I had to go. I asked them for a 3-month leave of absence, and they granted that. So I turned my practice over to my friend that I'd started up with. We shared office space, and I went out to Port Moody, British Columbia, to see what was going on. And of course, I was boggled by what I saw. I knew nothing about business or the wine industry. I took a couple of weeks off and went down to California, went to the University of Davis, where they had their enology school. Anyway, at the end of 3 months, I came back home, and I said to Connie, I can't figure out what to do. I think it's going to work out. We'll have to make this a permanent job. So I closed my practice up. I resigned from the hospital. We found a rented house out in Vancouver, and Connie with her and our 6 kids moved to Vancouver, and it was a great trial for Connie because we were giving up what had been a good living to a lot of uncertainty. So at the end of a year, we moved back, and so we were back in our own home, and the kids were going back to their old schools, and I was spending most of my time flying between Vancouver, Calgary, and Truro, and Toronto, around. And the good news was that table wine sales were increasing. The vision that Dad had was coming to fruition. It was interesting around this time. It was I was looking at different scenarios, trying to figure out what we could do. I discovered, reading through the tax policy and so on, and it was while I was looking into this, I discovered, to my amazement, that if you decrease the alcohol content of the wine, ordinarily table wine has an alcohol content of 11, 12, 13%, and that was true of champagne as well. But it turned out that if you decrease the alcohol below 7%, you could then carbonate the wine to the same level as champagne, and there was no tax. So I was boggled when I discovered this, and I could hardly believe it, but it turned out that it was a fact. So we started producing 7% alcohol table wine, carbonating it up to champagne levels, and we sold these as sparkling wine. And it was a huge success, compared to the fact that we were selling a little bit of white table wine and red table wine. The sparkling wines that we were selling were a great success, and they were called Chanté. The table wine that was showing the most growth was crackling rosé. The thing that really helped us, it was around this time that cold duck came on the market, and it was introduced by Gallo in California. And we introduced it into Canada long before anyone else, and it sold wonderfully well in Canada, and we called that baby duck. And of course that was just a great success, and that really made the company. When we were looking for a white wine that had some sort of German notation, and we did a fair amount of research on it and came up with the name Hochtaler. Our advertising agency used that theme for our Hochtaler ad, and it was just a huge success. It was interesting that the Alberta government, who had, they were Preston Manning's father at that time was still the premier of Alberta, and they had sort of very right-wing views on advertising content. The advertising agency told the liquor board there that this theme was from an amateur program that people were conducting in their home, and somehow they bought it and approved it. And the fact that they approved it, all the other liquor boards approved it in zip, and it was a great success. It was a great success. There is no doubt in my mind at all that all of our products came from within the company, and these would have been the result of the sales and marketing people meeting with the winemakers and production managers. This is where the new names came from. I am anything but a mechanic, so that the involvement with the details of the plant operation weren't something that I was familiar with, but I certainly did go through the plant several times a week. But I was, with my background in biochemistry and science, I was very close to the winemaking, and I spent a lot of time with the enologists and spent a lot of time making sure our enologists had good educational backgrounds. We had enologists who'd graduated from the enology school in Davis, Geisenheim, Germany, from Bordeaux in France, and we had regular meetings of the wineries, and we also had by far the most highly developed chemistry lab, wine chemistry lab of any company in Canada. There's no question about it. As the company was growing and doing well, we were doing well now in BC and all the country, except we didn't have any sales in Quebec, and we approached the liquor board there, and they wouldn't accept any wine unless it was produced in Quebec. So we looked around and we found a winery that was for sale in Quebec, and we bought it. And because we bought it, we were eligible for listings in the province of Quebec. And when I was talking to the chairman of the liquor board, I told him that what our plan was, and that we would be making baby duck in Quebec, and he said, look, he said, that will never sell in Quebec. He said, he said, French people take their wine very seriously, and that may be something that happens in BC, but it won't happen in Quebec. In any event, just so happened at that time that the PQ was elected, and I knew nothing about this. It came as a bolt out of the blue. One of the PQ plans was that they were going to put wine in grocery and variety stores. And if you can imagine, within 2 years, Baby Duck was the largest selling wine in Quebec of all brands, including imports. So it made a big difference. And then I remember very well going back in to see the chairman of the Liquor Control Board, and I said, I agree with you. French Canadians have a much better taste for wines than the rest of Canada. So we made the point. It's been a family business it's been part of the family right from the outset, and I think that sense of family evolves to incorporate all the people who work in the company. I think they feel that they're part of the family. Whenever we meet regularly with all the employees, and I know that different people say, we all feel that we're part of the Andres family. You never say we're part of the Andres company. People say that we're part of the Andres family. So I think it seeps right through the company.